You'll find that chopping out these housing joints is so much easier than chopping out those lap joints. And we'll give it a go, and you can see chisel. For chopping out the housings, I've chosen to use my 1/2 inch chisel, which is just the right width for the job. Before I start, have a look at the end grain here. And I don't know whether you can notice, but there is an angle on those annular rings, which means that if I approach the cut from this side, I get a much smoother ride than if I was to approach the cut from this side. Going from this direction, the chisel edge would tend to be digging in to those annular rings. I wouldn't get a very smooth surface. I've had to set up my Workmate slightly differently. This is at a slight angle to this, but it just about gives me the width I need to clamp that in. And again, it's important that I clamp that in really securely so there's no chance of it moving. The same grip as last time with the pairing. Pinch, 3 fingers, 1 finger, thumb, rest my finger on the edge of the wood and wiggle and push. And keep a lot of pressure on your thumb. Check your chisel's following a line down the middle of those 2 grooves. You don't want to pick up anything on the edges there. I'm only taking off about 2 millimeters at a time. I can use the heel of my hand if I want to improve my control over the chisel. Keeping my thumb on top of the chisel as I go. And you notice that I stop before I hit the other end there. I'm going to go quite carefully when I get back to that line. I've got about 1 millimeter to go. I put my chisel into the marking gauge line and I can now finish that cut off. I now turn the work round and resting my finger on the side of the wood as I go down so that I've got control over the tool. And I'm going to just put my chisel into that marking gauge line and just take that last bit off. And what I have to do now is just check that this is absolutely flat. And I can do that with my steel rule. I put my finger on the middle there. It should be possible to see that steel rule sitting on that line, on that side and on that side. And you'll see that we're down to the line here and here. And we'll leave it at that. That's pretty good. Have a go at the next one, remembering which side we want to approach the wood from. And then finally, I can put it on the line. Take that across. If we've got these bits left, the same trick, assassin's dagger and scissors, paper and stone with the other hand. Turn the wood round. I find it better to have it quite close to the edge of the Workmate so that you can get this hand in the right position. And we can take off that little bit of foot on the Workmate so it doesn't ping up. finally settling the chisel into that marking gauge line and taking that last bit off. Check it with a steel rule. This time I've got a slight rock on there. I can see that I've got a gap here and I need to take a little bit more out of this section. Now thinking about it, it doesn't really matter if that middle section is below the surface of the outside edges, because the shelf that's going in there is going to rest here and here. If it doesn't quite touch in the middle, that isn't going to matter. So using that, I can now take a look at that. Now, there's a bit of a gap here, so I'm going to turn it round again and come back from the other side. I'm down to the line here, so it's just that next section I got to take out. Let's remove those bits. Check it with a steel rule. Still got a slight bit of light here, just on that last couple of millimeters. So I'm going to go put my chisel back in there. Take that off. Try that. I'll show you. I've still got materials to take out from that side. You can see the steel rule isn't touching the edge of the wood there. And that's good. Let's check the other one. No, I've got a bit more work to do on that as well. Let's go in from this side. And from the other side as well. A wee bit more. Perfect. Good. Let's have a look. No showing anywhere along that steel rule. And that's what you're after, a dead flat bottom to that joint. And there you go, I've knocked this grain up a little bit. I have to put some glue on there, press that back in. But that's what we need. We'll do the other one and it'll be finished. And there we are. 2 sets of housing joints. Good. I notice I've got a line left on here that I haven't planed back to, and similarly on this other side piece there's just a residual bit of the line there, so I'm going to do a bit of planing just to pull that back. And it made me think that perhaps I ought to check the rest of the dimensions of my work before I start assembling it. I've remarked the shelves so that I'm very clear which is the bottom shelf, which is the top shelf. And I'm going to just go around that with a marking gauge just to check that all those shelves are the right thickness, so that I don't get disappointed when I try and put them into the perfectly cut 14mm housing joints. The other thing I'll do is to just check these shelves for height, just to make sure that they're all identical. And again, when I put those together, there's just a slight variance outside my 0.1 tolerance that I'm working to. So I think I'll start with these. I'm going to tape those together, put them in the Workmate, and then just tidy those ends up so that they are exactly the same length, and I won't run into any problems when it comes to gluing. Let's do that now. Oh, the other thing that's probably worth noting is that they should all sit, providing you've got a nice flat surface and a clean surface, they should all sit perpendicular to the bench. And if they don't, it means you've got a slight angle on one of those. This one, for instance, is not sitting in line with these, so it figures that the end of this isn't quite square. I've checked that piece with my square against my reference edge, and I don't know whether you can see, but it's just slightly off, again outside my 0.1mm. So I'm just going to correct that with a marking knife line followed by a bit of planing. And we'll see if that's done the job. Much better. Let's just try it with the others. Good. Having checked with the others, that's now in line, within the parameters we're working to. Good. Now what I can do is to tape those up and work on the end here. This piece here is a little bit higher than the others, and I will work on that to make it better. Just before I start, I'm going to check on the underside of the stack of shelves that they're still in line and that the stack is at 90 degrees to the reference edge, so to make sure this is a sensible surface to return uniformity to. Good, that's all nice and uniform. Good, so now we've got those exactly the same length. And the other thing I'm going to do is to just plane these side bits back to the line, and then I'm going to check these to make sure that I have shelf thicknesses that are exactly 14.